How you doing, man?
Good. Good. How's it going?
Really good. I'm excited. I've been wanting to do this one for a while.
Yeah?
So ever since I met your son, Hayden.
Yeah.
You know, Jeff, just give an intro. Just tell my audience, what you're all about.
What I'm all about. So I'm a pretty ordinary guy. Ordinary family man, born in California. 2 kids, wife, nice job, friends. And, as we'll probably dig into a little bit here, just before the turn of the century, around 1998, 1999, things kind of got turned upside down. And I met someone in the, UFO community that, sent everything kind of in a tailspin in a good way.
Yeah.
But, things have never been quite the same ever since that. And that's probably why you and I are talking, I imagine, today.
Yeah. I want to give a background of like how I met you. I love this story. Okay. It's one of my favorite stories because I was not, I did not investigate UFOs ever. I've always been focused on my filmmaking career, making short films,
Right.
making music videos for rappers and doing wedding videos and just trying to grow my filmmaking career. And I always wondered, everyone looks up at the stars at night. So I wonder, but I never watched films of it, or at least never saw anything on television saying, oh, they're real.
Yeah.
Until about 4 years ago. What do you think? 4 years ago, Eric? 4 years ago?
Yeah, about unacknowledged. So it was, about 3 years ago.
Yeah. So he shows me, my business partner shows me unacknowledged.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I felt I just took the red pill in the Matrix, and I
Right.
said, you got to be kidding me right now. This is real. These government officials who handle our nuclear bombs are just coming forth saying these things are over our bases, shutting off our nukes. I mean, even go into detail of seeing actual ET. I mean, I was just like, this is insane. I watched that documentary probably 5 times.
Right.
And a part of me went down a dark rabbit hole, almost like, what's the point of living with all this technology? They have so much power, these underground forces. And honestly, I think it's healthy to when you get hit by the knowledge, they just ripped off the Band-Aid. Hey, by the way, they're real. I'm like, oh, what? But it's funny because I wanted to meet the person. I was a filmmaker. I was like, I got to help this guy out. I want to help him. I want to help him edit the next documentary. I just want to be around that network of people to help spread the awareness. So 2 weeks later, dude, I'm at a party, my best friend's party, and I see this kid in the corner, and he's just you can tell he's just different than the other kids. He's just got this demeanor, he's just more awoken, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I just hey, what's up, man? He's like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, and then I just ask him, dude, I don't do this to anybody. I'm like, dude, do you believe in UFOs?
That was your opening question?
Literally, when I just go straight into it.
Wow. That's an interesting opener.
I know. And out of all the people I could have asked, I asked the guy whose dad worked with Dr. Steven Greer, the guy who made Unacknowledged. When he told me his story and how you helped Greer prior to Unacknowledged getting this out, I was like, how the heck have I been imagining trying to work with this network? And 2 weeks later, I meet the guy whose dad helped work with the guy that made the Netflix UFO documentary.
Yeah.
So I was like, I got to meet you.
Yeah.
And here we are now.
Yeah, that is. I have to say that is pretty mind blowing.
Yeah.
That is a weird connection there. And the way that I got introduced to Dr. Steven Greer, I guess we'll talk about him in a second for people that don't know who he is much. I wouldn't say stranger, but different, right? So I was doing stand-up comedy really seriously back in the 90s to the point where I was going to make a career out of it.
Right.
And I was doing pretty good. And one of my buddies who's a comic said, hey, man, if you really want to get some good material for the audience, you have to go to one of these UFO conventions, right? Because, and back then, by the way, I mean, it was pretty raw.
What year
at
was
a UFO.
that?
This would be 1996 or 7 ish, and I took his advice and I went, and sure enough, not to make light of the subject, but there was things there at that convention that were ripe for comedy. It gave me about a solid 20 minutes of jokes.
A lot of tinfoil hats.
Yeah. And I did my little jokes, and it was very funny. But then I went back a second time, and I caught Steven Greer talking, Now, suddenly, this guy, kind of like what you were saying about my son, there was something different, I guess, right?
Uh-huh.
Dr. Greer, he wasn't trying to make money. He wasn't at the time selling any kind of a book or anything. He was an actual emergency room physician.
Yeah.
Who, by pure happenstance, started talking late at night in country clubs near him with brigadier generals and guys that were retired in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. And over a couple of brandies, they would just start spilling their guts about UFOs, extraterrestrials, advanced technologies. He was...
So he was hanging out. So he was hanging out with generals that were starting to get a little loose with the drinks, and then they started spilling the truth beans. He's like, that's a little crazy. What?
And at first he does what everyone would do. Whatever. But after a while, he starts to get to know these guys.
Yeah.
And then he's fascinated, and he's trying to understand the logic of it. How could we not know about this? How is it kept secret?
Right.
Why is it kept secret?
Yeah.
All these big things. So as he's giving his lecture, I'm thinking, well, this is different. I want to make fun of the guy, but wait, what now?
Right.
Like my brain just started let a little bit of it in. Like,
comedy took the back seat for a second.
Right. I still have my cognitive dissonance, right? I still have my defense mechanisms up.
Of course.
I'm not going to let it all in. So I see the guy about 3 or 4 times at different appearances. And then I finally approached him and I said, hey, man, you say you're going to get together all these witnesses and you're shooting, literally filming all these military, government, private contractor witnesses to this story. I work in Hollywood and I have a little stupid Macintosh and I know how to edit. I mean, I could edit that for you. And he's like, oh, awesome. He just instantly trusted me and was a super nice guy about it. Flew me out to his house back east. And I got to meet all these witnesses. And the whole time I'm still kind of skeptical. I'm like, geez, what did I just get myself into? But incredibly, I'm sitting down with all these guys at his house and my mind was just completely blown. And then, God forbid, a month later, when all the videotapes start arriving at my house and I start sorting through it and I'm scrubbing like an editor would do, looking at my raw footage.
Yep.
And I had to stop myself about 100 times and go, wait, what? This is a guy who, was a brigadier general for Eisenhower, and he was there to witness this, and this guy controlled 17 nuclear missiles at a silo at Malmstrom Air Force Base, and a UFO shut all the missiles down, and the same thing happened at a nearby
What is your wife saying at this point? And when she's like, honey, what are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm just doing some editing.
I'll tell you exactly what she's saying. I'm 7 months pregnant. I don't care.
Oh,
that's what she's saying.
Gosh.
Right? And I'm trying to okay, I've got the baby's coming, but oh my God, the world. What
the world.
And so I had to go through this acclimation period just like you did, where I was kind of freaking out, kind of quietly inside, wait a minute, this is real? And once you hear how it's kept secret, why it's kept secret, and how the whole machinations of the military-industrial complex work, it's no longer a mystery. You get it, but your brain still has a hard time going, I'm sorry, what the F now? What's happening? So
you edit these videos, and you're at this point you're a believer, or you're still like, is it still hit? Is it like, okay, I'm editing this, I told him I do this, and I want to believe, but once you see all these top military generals who are in charge of our nukes saying this stuff, then you're like, okay, I better take a closer look at this, but you're editing it at the same time?
Yes, what you're saying is true. If anyone's ever watched an old episode of Star Trek, I'm an older guy, so, I almost equate it to, I'm trying to use my Vulcan brain. I'm Spock.
Right, okay. Now
I'm seeing all kinds of crazy, going on in front of me. And so the classic one eyebrow is going up, where I'm willing to consider this scenario.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in the back of my mind, it's like, and what's the punchline? And I'm going to find out this, or this is all something else, and I was tricked. And so I was still, I guess, a little bit skeptical. And your brain can't really get around it. It took me about 2 to 3 years to fully accept that this is the reality we've lived in for 60, 70 years.
So after you're done editing the first batch of interviews, like how long was the video when you finished the video for Greer?
We had a 4-hour version.
Okay.
And
he mentions that, by the way, in the disclosure 2001. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's raw. I mean, there is no fluff. There isn't a lot of B-roll or music or much of a narrator. Just he does a little intro. So this is for a hardcore person with an open mind, right? Because it's not presented or spoon-fed with all the Hollywood.
You know, it's funny you said my mom's to the point where she's like, I'm done with the fluff, I'm done with the B-roll, give me the raw interviews.
Oh, she liked this then.
Yeah, so I actually showed her that the raw disclosure 2001 where he went national press conference and interview after interview after interview, these highlights. So there's no B-roll, there's just like straight interview, which so you hand them this 4-hour tape. Are you nervous at this point when you're editing this? You're like, okay, I'm about to blow the whistle on the biggest cover-up in the world?
No. Here's what happened, and I don't know why I believed this guy, but I was right to do so. When we were at his house, and we were getting to know some of the people on the production team, and also some of the witnesses, one of the guys took me aside, and I asked that question. I kind of asked it not quite so bluntly, but I'm like, should I be,
should I be worried about not getting my head chopped off here?
Yeah, and the way he explained it, and Greer has explained this many times, there was a time, not too long ago, when if you knew things that were too sensitive, you would just disappear. And that's the reality of it. They would take you out.
Yeah.
Then there was more of a move to discredit or ridicule someone with plausible deniability.
Right.
So you would mess up their career. You would mess up their ability to make money. You would mess up their reputation. You would threaten them with looking stupid in front of their peers. And that's a really credible way to do it.
Yeah.
But he said more and more, he goes, this is so much information coming out at once. It's going to largely be ignored because it's too big. And so little ants like you aren't going to be pulled to the side when you're dumping this giant data dump. It's not really going to be you that gets in trouble. Greer might get some pressure, which he has throughout his entire...
Oh, yeah. I've heard stories where he's got...
However, we may not want to get into it, during this podcast, but I did have my situation.
I wanted to ask you if we could get into that later,
but I
was
safe.
I know, right? I don't want that happening again, but I think now is a I don't know. Is that okay if we can get into that a little bit?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's continue. So you hand him this 4-hour videotape. You do the editing. How long does that take you? About a month, 2 months?
Yeah, it took me 3 or 4 weeks just to scrub through everything.
Right.
Another 3 or 4 weeks to get rough cuts.
Yeah.
And I would say over the course of 2.5 to 3 months, we got it mostly put together. And again, looking back on it, it's rough.
Yeah.
I'm literally on an iMac using like some super primitive software.
You're not getting paid for this. You're just doing this to like help the world out, right?
I thought.
Right. We'll get into that too. So you finish it, and then what you told me that was really interesting is you guys started renting out movie theaters and showing it. Is this when you guys started doing that?
Yeah. He had a national press conference in Washington, D.C. It really happened.
Yeah, okay.
And a lot of the witnesses were there. But again, when you do this large of a reveal all at once, the world doesn't understand how to even get their head around it.
Right.
So there were some polite questions from the press, but it was largely ignored afterwards because it's just too much too fast.
Right.
So we did a grassroots effort, and we were encouraged by Dr. Greer, and it was great, to rent out local movie theaters and venues and do our own presentations with the material. So I did that many, many times. I held little lectures.
You were in
stuff,
charge of renting out the movie theater, getting guests, holding Q&As after all that. You were the head honcho for that?
No. I wasn't the head honcho at all. Every person that was on the team had their own little grassroots efforts in their home or city or town or whatever.
Oh, okay.
I just happened to hold 2 or 3 of my own.
Okay.
In my local area. I had nothing to do with the whole project.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you basically you edited it. They got distributed to their networks, but you had 3 venues, or you did 3 showings.
3 or 4.
3 or 4 showings. How were they?
Super interesting. So you would get the hardcore UFO people there, and sometimes they would ask very odd questions, and I tried to keep it on track.
Were you answering?
I would present the material, show the testimony, and then take questions at the end.
Gotcha.
And as you can imagine, we would get off into the weeds. Well, the reptilians in league with the Pleiadians are here to abduct us, and when they come here, then there's an underground base, and the president of the United States is secretly an alien, and you'd go off on these sidetracks.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of noise out there.
But the way I presented it was the way that Dr. Greer basically presented it, and it's the way the material revealed itself, which is, no, this is not cows getting mutilated on a ranch. This is not somebody in the Ozarks getting taken up by Billy Bob's truck and getting probed by an alien.
Yeah.
This is 70 years of everyone in the world being completely duped by what really happens in the military-industrial complex. History, as you know it, is completely upside down and wrong. And there's a reason it's able to do that. And again, we can get into that. But once you realize that, you feel like an idiot. But you can't explain it to everybody because when you try to, their eyes glaze over after the first couple sentences, and it's like, dude.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, cognitive dissonance, like, I mean, the media has been, you know, it's funny because what we have on the screen here, this just came out a couple days ago. I'm sure we talked about this. Yeah. You know, what was it, Bob Lazar? If you go on his Twitter right now, he's loving life. It's like memes of him like in a red carpet because he's finally vindicated. It's hilarious. But the truth is, they literally say they have a extraterrestrial vehicle in their possession, and it's, quote, not from Earth. They've never said that before. In 2017, they said they admitted they had a program that investigated UFOs, and $22 million of our taxpayer monies was going to that. First off, 22 million, yeah, right. More like 22 trillion. But this just came out a couple days ago, and that's why I called you. I wanted to do this interview because I was excited because for the first time, they literally said, we have this craft. It's not from Earth 100%. And for me, my mom, like, it hit my mom finally. She's like, oh my gosh, it's real. And before, I would show her these credible testimonials. I would show her the unacknowledged. I would show her all these high government officials, but it wasn't enough. It's got to be the New York Times. It's got to be ABC, Fox.
Of course.
For some reason that they're just programmed. If they say it, then it's the truth.
Yep.
But you know, you've been doing this with Greer way before this came out, and you've been telling people, but it just wasn't resonating, cognitive dissonance. And so let's get back to it, man. So you do these premieres. Do you feel like it was worth it? You're like, I'm getting somewhere, or, you know, these guys aren't really clicking, and you're like, I'm going to go back to my day-to-day job?
No, it was totally worth it. You know, if nothing else, my own journey. It wasn't just learning this amazing information and how the world works, and as a kid who loved science fiction, still loves science fiction, getting kind of like vindication that there is a larger world out there. There is intelligent life. We actually have experienced it here countless times on Earth, and it's just been cleverly hidden away. That was hugely satisfying. But here's the weird thing. What's almost more interesting to me at this point isn't so much the machinations of how it's hidden and the technologies and how they're used to this day. It's the human condition, how humans are able to process information that is too far out of their belief system. That's what blew my mind more than anything, that everybody wasn't interested in this. And again, I'm not saying, did you see there was a UFO and it came down and it picked him up? You know, I'm not a crazy person.
Yeah.
Okay, I may seem crazy.
We're all crazy.
I'm showing you dozens and dozens of highly ranked military personnel, the head of the FAA, a brigadier general, a guy that's entrusted with multiple nuclear missiles.
Yeah.
These guys, a guy that works on a nuclear submarine or a nuclear carrier, what do they have to gain? Nothing.
Yeah.
By telling these stories. And yet that kind of vetted human witness testimony just goes over people's heads. They don't get it. They're no.
When the National Press Conference, was it National Press event when they went live?
Yeah.
I love the speech. It's like, these guys were trusted with our nukes. We should trust them now, what they're about to say.
And this has been said a lot, but ask yourself, if we acknowledge that there are unidentified aerial objects in NORAD's airspace, and we acknowledge that we don't know where they came from, how they're able to do that, forget aliens for a second. Why is that not a huge national security concern? Well, something flew in, did outrageous maneuvers. We had to scramble jets. We never caught it. Oh, well, you know, what's on Netflix? Is that really how NORAD acts? So ask yourself, as a citizen, as a normal human being, why aren't they explaining this? Why don't they care? Well, of course they care. But again, this gets into the disconnect between what we call the government and the military and this other thing.
Yeah, well, my favorite thing is Marco Rubio. He's like, all right, he's finally coming out. He's sitting on the Senate. He's the only guy that's really kind of making some noise in Washington saying, all right, you guys have 180 days to prove something. We're paying, the taxpayers paying for this. We need to know now. Where was he, before this? So every time I've been posting about this, everyone in my comment sections are saying, why are they just releasing this now? A couple theories are it's coronavirus season, so it's easier to like get your mind wrapped around something like this when you got something bigger that's been blasting you, so it's easier to digest. But the fact is they've been dripping this out for a while. I mean, 2017 they admitted they have a secret program that watches UFOs. These Tic Tac videos have been released. These Tic Tac videos are old news. So when I first saw these Tic Tac videos, everyone's, oh well, those are military. Those aren't aliens. Those are just unidentified flying objects. Well, I mean, obviously, but I mean these are going 4 times the speed of sound. They're making right-hand turns. I mean, a human being cannot survive in that. Why do you now? This is why I told my viewers and some of my friends, I would ask you this question: Why are they releasing this now? Why?
Okay. So you're partly right. This is the year of up is down, left is right. Nothing makes sense. 2020.
Yeah.
You've literally got everything from civil unrest to murder hornets. It's just everything. So it's become the year that everyone expects anything to happen, and you're kind of like just taking it, on the chin a little bit. Like, whatever, man, I guess.
Yeah.
So for sure. But realize this. I know that it was a revelation for your mom, and that's great. But what they're saying is silly. That is the tiniest tip of the iceberg.
I know, yeah.
They are only giving you a teeny little crumb from the giant, package. So from as early as the 30s and 40s, we have had and retrieved extraterrestrial craft, have backwards engineered the technology, and have been using it in sections of the military that the military doesn't even know about or have access to due to national security. The president doesn't have access to. A general will say, if this were going on, if Area 51, for instance, or a place like that, really had these technologies, and it was extraterrestrial, and we did know about aliens, I would know about it. It's the biggest ego move of all time. That's not how it works. Someone that's 5 or 6 ranks below him is pulled off to the side and works in a need-to-know project. And even he only knows one section of it, and very few people have all the answers, but that's how it happens. And there's trillions of dollars funneled into it from your and my taxpayer money, and it's called Unacknowledged Special Access Projects, USAP. Look it up, and you'll see that the General Accounting Office can't account for billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
We don't know. Black projects.
Who was it? Man, I saw that news clip. Some guy tried to audit the government. He's like, we can't account for trillions. And I think it was my buddy Eric. Someone told me about this screw in the military. They'd audited a screw, and it was like $600,000 for this one screw. So they inflate the prices in the military spending. Eisenhower famously said, what? What did he say?
In the councils of government, we must guard against the unwarranted influence, basically, of the military-industrial complex. What he was saying in his farewell speech is what he ran into as he was heading out. Eisenhower, it is believed and backed up by multiple witnesses, was one of the last presidents that was completely in the loop on the extraterrestrial situation and advanced technologies that had been recovered. What he immediately saw was this new world where private corporations are married now to military operations. The corporations don't have to reveal anything because of national security, and the military can hide under corporate law. And that becomes the new ruler of the United States. That is, in fact, who is funneling money, and nobody gets answers to any of it because you can't. You can't. He saw that as the biggest threat to democracy, because forget aliens and UFOs for a second. They can just write their own checks and do whatever they want. And sometimes you'll see a little bit of evidence of that, right? Like a $600 screw. Okay?
That's what it was, $600 screw. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's right, and that's how it's kept secret, right?
Yeah.
So Biggest question number one, right? I'll probably just ask it for you if you don't mind.
Please.
Jeff, how could the government have kept this secret? The government, they're all a bunch of idiots. It's all red tape and bureaucracy. They can't do anything right. There's no way they could keep it secret. They're not keeping it secret. They're not in the loop. They don't know anything. Very few people within the government know anything. Again, this is private corporations, people in the banking industry with the world banking connections, and the military, and not always a general. Sometimes people below that. That's who knows about it.
Yeah.
So when the president says, I don't know anything about this, he's probably telling the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was what was it, Clinton, who wanted to explore this, but I mean, Greer told us that, he's like, if you want to end up like Kennedy, you keep your mouth shut. Something along those lines. And I was like, whoa. I don't know if that's verbatim, but I mean, so when presidents nowadays, like Trump, he's saying, actually it was really interesting what he said. If you look at his interview with Trump Jr. at the very end of the 17-minute interview, he's like, all right, I got to ask the question, man. Are you going to tell us about aliens? Trump literally said, I read about Roswell and I know some things and it's very interesting and I don't think I'm going to tell. I'm thinking about telling the public, but I don't know yet. That was his like exact quote. And I was like, okay. Because that was back in the what, 50s? 40s. So
that says to me that he heard something from someone who's a guy who might know. And when you talk about Roswell, you're kind of talking about, the most talked about between Roswell and Area 51. Those are like the two big landing points for everyone that's a starter on the UFO world.
Yeah.
But it's so much more advanced since then. But this brings us to the next big question. All right, Jeff, let me imagine that there's a military-industrial complex, and they're able to funnel unacknowledged money into projects that even the president doesn't have access to.
There you go.
Well, he can. Look it up. Or they can. So now, why? Why? We're all adults, aren't we? I don't know, 2020, maybe we're not adults, but we're all adults. We can handle the truth, man. We've seen 1,000 science fiction things. We've all seen it a million times. Why are they keeping it a secret? Here's why. Is it about panic? No, not really. Are people going to freak out and tear their hair out? Yeah, some people will. They always will. No, it's about the technology.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything new. This is what Greer has been saying, and this is what these witnesses say. The technology that we discovered and have backwards engineered, meaning take it apart and utilize it for our own advantage, is not running on fuel. So it pulls from the vacuum of space. Some of these propulsion systems or energy generation devices have no moving parts. They're small, they're cheap, they're scalable, and they would literally mean the elimination of multi-trillion-dollar industries overnight.
This Tic Tac thing ain't using gasoline.
So imagine a third world country within a couple of generations becoming a first world country because they no longer had to be on the power grid. They no longer had to have, Ma and Pa Edison coming in, right?
Yeah.
Also, you're talking about anti-gravity. Well, you can't have the enemy with anti-gravity. You can't have the enemy having ships or fighters that can appear over the coast of the United States, the Pacific coast, instantly, and then disappearing. Come on, man.
Right.
So there's this apple cart. It's all about control. If you start to unveil this, you ultimately have to start talking about the technology, and they don't want to go there because it's a control thing.
So, all right. So now let's get into your story with, you said, all right, I'm going to have to put this.
Did heads explode?
Hell, heads always.
Right.
This is where you're to the point where you know all this stuff. You're rapping it to people in audiences and theaters. You've interviewed and interviewed these generals, or Greer interviewed them and you edited them.
Yeah.
Who shows up your house?
Oh, so the Disclosure Project was behind me, and the National Press Club event was behind me, and that was all in the past. And I was really happy to see that there was some momentum.
Yeah.
And it was going to keep going. And Greer, God bless him, does not give up, and he keeps cranking away. Good for him. I thought my life was going back to kind of normal, and I kind of started shutting up about it a little bit, not embarrassing my wife at barbecues anymore, not talking about it quite as much, right?
I know, man. I know what you mean by that.
On a complete side project that had nothing to do with Greer, I started dipping my toe into another story that took place at S4, which is Groom Lake, which is Area 51, and a witness there who claims he had worked alongside an extraterrestrial entity. And I kind of like, okay, yeah, man, I'll help you with some of that footage. Totally different researcher. I don't want to mention that right now and go into it too much. But, and that's the one that triggered problems, weirdly. Maybe because I was kind of solo on it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, they took it serious. So what happened was we wanted to get a gate in our courtyard so that salespeople couldn't bug us all day long.
Okay.
I talked to my wife about it inside the house, and about 45 minutes later, knock, knock, hi, we sell security gates. Oh, that's interesting.
Did you say 40 minutes later?
45, 50 minutes later, like within an hour's time, someone starts coming over.
Pre-Facebook.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
a woman who doesn't have a business card and just kind of has a thrown together flyer says, yeah, we do decorative gates and other things. And I had no reason not to believe her. I'm like, God, your timing is amazing. That's incredible, right?
Yeah.
So she takes some measurements and, okay, yeah, well, give us some quotes. Awesome,
Yeah.
I'll get back to you. And she handwrites a cell phone number on the flyer.
Okay.
I think I still have the flyer. We forget about it, right? My wife, much later on, I think maybe 2 or 3 days later, decides to grab the flyer and call the cell phone number that's handwritten. She calls it, and my friend answers the phone. This is my friend that's worked on these projects with me. He worked at Unisys at the time, which is a computer company, with a secret clearance.
Mm-hmm.
The phone number is not given to the public. It is directly to his division. And he immediately recognizes my wife's voice and says, whoa, wait a minute. How do you even have this number? Jeff doesn't have this number. It's actually illegal for me to give out the number. What is going on?
Yeah.
She's like, I'm reading it right here. It's on the flyer. He reads her the number. Excuse me. She reads him the number, and that's not his number. So understand, she typed in the correct phone number that was on the flyer, but it got redirected to my friend at Unisys who knew nothing about any of this.
So the hint basically was...
So I was told, now I'm flashing back to when I first met Greer at his house and I was talking to some of the witnesses. I flashed back to, this is an old CIA intelligence intimidation trick. If I know that you and Eric are secret agents or whatever and you're working together, but no one's supposed to know that,
Yeah.
you're going to make a phone call to someone, but I'm going to connect you to Eric, showing you that there's a third party that knows that you two are connected and is giving you a warning.
Back off.
Back off.
And you
So
did.
I did.
And you did.
Completely. I have 2 kids.
Yeah, right. You finally had the kid at the time.
I mean, it's an interesting story, but I also,
was that
value my
Hayden?
life.
Was that you finally have Hayden? Is that what?
I'd already had Hayden and
Okay.
Jared. Yeah, no. So anyway, yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And really, I had to think about it 100 times. Like, no, there's no possibility that could have happened without a third party stepping in. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, I got to talk about these barbecue parties, man. Because, you know so much, and you just want to tell people, right? I mean, this is speaking from my experience. When I
Yeah.
watched Unacknowledged, I wanted to tell everybody in my 2 feet proximity. I was like, have you seen Unacknowledged? Did you know about this? Do you know? And I couldn't keep it together.
Yeah.
I couldn't go backwards and just be dumb, for lack of a better term.
Right.
But how did you deal with that when people started saying, what is Jeff talking about when he's talking? How did you deal with just keeping your calm? Was it hard in the beginning when you're editing all this stuff and you know all this stuff and you're like, I just got to tell everybody, but I got to keep it together still?
Yeah, I just went through everything you did. I'm not any better at it than you might be.
Yeah.
And so for the first 1.5 to 2 years, I was really just, more annoying than I already am. I'm already kind of an outgoing guy. I do stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in your face. If you give me a little bit of an in, I'll be kind of larger than life and blah, blah, blah. So I had no problem, after getting to know somebody for 30 or 40 minutes, even a complete stranger.
Right.
Working it into the conversation, testing the waters a little bit, and then kind of going, interesting you should say that, and kind of peppering in some of my knowledge. But, I've also just blabbed like an idiot to people that thought I was crazy, and that's probably most of the time.
Yeah.
To the point where I finally just said, this isn't getting anywhere. People don't really want to hear about this. every once in a blue moon, you'll get someone like yourself or like Eric that will go, wow, I'm open-minded to this. I actually do want to learn more about this, and this is really cool. Most people are not like that.
Yeah.
And the more they start to feel like this could be real, the bigger the wall that goes up.
Sure.
And
sure.
now I want you to literally shut up.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to start ridiculing you if you don't shut up. And if you don't take the ridicule, I'm actually going to get angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started going on a posting frenzy, and my sister told my mom, Jordan's crazy.
Yeah. No,
I was like, I know I am.
Yeah.
But I love this stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: when we talked on the phone, I talked to you a second time saying, hey, I have an idea. I want to do this interview. And you said, listen, Jordan, I'm excited. Like, because you said the first conversation when I called you about this, you said, if I didn't sound excited on the phone, but I am. Tell me a little bit more about this. What all the major news media posts about, they have a vehicle that's not from this earth, and it's 100% not from this earth we have in our possession. What is that like? How do you feel about what just happened a couple of days ago?
It is a big deal. When you take it from the big picture and look down on it like you and I can, the macro picture, everything that I just described, having reproductive vehicles that we've created from alien technology for decades already in our possession, perfected, versus this news of, we think that we might have discovered, and the Office of Naval Intelligence has now admitted that there's a secret division within it, and there's a contractor within that who is now saying that we probably had the extra. That's great. Don't get me wrong. It's absolutely amazing, because up until now, every single UFO story on every news agency always starts out like this. Little green men from outer space? We'll find out tonight at 10. Plus, a baby seal was born. How do you like that? That's every single UFO story. Now, are all the reporters in on it? Are all the journalists trying to keep this from us? No, it's the culture. But when it comes from the Pentagon, and the Pentagon says, yes, we work with ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence. They have a division that definitely looked into this. That gun camera footage, or whatever that footage was that we saw recently, the Tic-Tac footage of the
radar.
Yeah.
Yep.
We acknowledge that that's real footage. It's not tampered with. It's not faked. It's not photoshopped. It's not a video editing trick. That's a big deal. It means that there are now official channels that are testing the waters, but they're not making fun anymore. And because they didn't make fun of it, reporters are less inclined to make fun of it, right? So, yeah, we're getting really close. But I hate to say it, knock on wood, this isn't the case. This could also die down for 4 years, and then there will be another announcement, and it won't be much bigger than this one. Or 2 months from now, they can go, okay, you got us. Here's why we kept it a secret. Aliens are real. This is all real. But they might do this, which we were warned about, is...
Yeah, hold on. On that note, Unacknowledged basically foreshadows this. And Unacknowledged, if you guys haven't seen Unacknowledged, you guys see Unacknowledged on Netflix, and then watch his newer documentary called C5. But Unacknowledged basically says the government will eventually tell us about the ETs, and they will say they are a threat, and we need to get our guns, invest in our military again, and go into space and make sure that we are protected by these beings that are shutting off our nukes. That's one narrative. That's the competition over cooperation mindset, versus Greer is cooperation over competition. These guys are basically saying that, hey, we can shut off your nukes, and we don't want you to blow each other up to smithereens. What's your take on that?
Yeah. Understand that, again, this all goes back to control. So the military-industrial complex doesn't want to lose control. If they give in to the notion that, hey, it's now culturally accepted by most of the world that these things are way more advanced than us, and they're largely benevolent, and there's no actual, clear and present threat to humanity, that takes away a huge amount of control from the military-industrial complex. That's a bad idea. That's bad for business, right? They're in the business of building military things, okay? Building devices and machines and tunnels and da-da-da. Have to keep spending money, right? So that's bad. So they want a spin, like you just said, of, look, we admit that they're real. Here's why we kept it secret. They're a threat. Now, here's what we propose. We're working on these really expensive things. Give us a bunch of money for space-based weapons that we can point outwards and we can protect the Earth. Okay, right? So it's like the corner of New York when you have the, where's the queen? Where's the queen? Check it out. Where is she? Where is she? You know, you're just getting conned. It's always, you're never going to win that game. They're always going to spin it. So I guess people just have to be aware of that, not to believe the first thing you hear about this announcement.
Yeah.
You got to be careful.
Yeah. You know, Dr. Greer, obviously you haven't been in contact with Greer for a while, right?
No, not directly.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of his latest stuff, and his proposal for people to bypass government is he's been involved in training people how to remote view and really focusing on consciousness and telepathy. You ever had a person call you and you were like, oh, I was just thinking about you? That's happened to everybody.
Sure.
So he's perfected that, and now he's made a master class on his app, and you go out under the stars with a group, meditate, have an intention, and visualize ET craft, and they'll start appearing astrally, not 3D, because there's so much weapons now in space. They're saying these radars or these satellites have weapons on the satellites that can just blast these craft if they show up in actual 3D form. So they're kind of showing up in this astral form. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I've not done this yet, but I'm going to attempt this because he's having hundreds and hundreds of people going out and recording their results, and they're posting it. And in this new documentary, he has all this footage of ETs showing up in the air after they make the intention of calling them out, bypassing on Tic Tac videos.
Sure. No, I get that.
Yeah.
And I would only say from my perspective that is not just an open mind, that is beyond an open mind. Okay? So you and I talked about people that are barely able to digest this tiny tidbit of news,
right,
that through proper real channels we're kind of sort of admitting that maybe kind of if there might be something. And you're talking about making contact with your mind using a quantum entanglement aspect of the human spiritual experience that can somehow link to an extraterrestrial entity that bypasses three-dimensional space. Awesome, dude. But that is a very small percentage of the people that can even get around that. I'm saying let's just start with this.
Yeah. So what do you propose for the person that has now acknowledged that we might have an ET if the government's finally saying that? Is there a kind of what do you recommend for the beginner? Is there some information they can start going to now to do their own due diligence?
Yeah. No, you can. I would say that if you just went to YouTube and you just typed in, for instance, The Disclosure Project.
Right.
And with an open mind, you just started listening to dozens of military and government contracted witnesses.
Yeah.
Talk about their experience.
Yep.
Under the context of what I just said.
Yep.
That you go to Netflix. I believe, yeah. That you watch Unacknowledged.
Yep.
Start to finish. Hey, it's a couple hours of your time.
I've watched it 10 times, man.
A couple hours of your time with an open mind.
Yep.
After what I just explained, you might notice that you're starting to at least leave room for maybe I can see that this is possible. And that's a great beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I would say.
What's a future you're hopeful for, man? I mean, what do you want to happen if you can wave a magic wand?
I mean, look, in a perfect world.
Yeah, what's a perfect world for Jeff?
Going back to my love of Star Trek and things like that. The one thing that I always loved, and I was just talking to a buddy of mine about this, about Star Trek. They imagine a future where, there's alien life out there. In fact, the universe is teeming with intelligent life.
Yeah.
Some of it good, some of it bad, some of them it just doesn't have our good intentions, but most of it's good. And we've gotten past, for the most part, warring and corruption and evil, right? We've gotten out of our own way, and now we're expanding into the universe, okay? So I see Mars missions. I see guys like Elon Musk taking us way further than we ever would have gone because he's kind of bypassing corporate nonsense to get there.
Yeah.
And I see this news starting to peak out, and it kind of goes back to what Reagan said many times, President Reagan. I often wonder, this quote, what would happen if we realized and were told that there's alien life out there? How all of our own personal problems and petty grievances on the earth would somehow vanish and not seem so important once we realized there was this bigger picture. So my dream would be, number one, this becomes a reality. Everyone on Earth now knows that there's intelligent life out there, and we're part of a larger community. That would be my dream. My other dream would be, and we're welcomed into that community, and we're starting to expand into space and getting out of our own way, and maybe there's hope.
Yeah,
that's my dream.
I think we share a very common dream. I mean, when you're seeing this,
and jetpacks.
Wait, so runs on gasoline, man. I want the Tic Tac.
I'm gonna go
version.
back and start with jetpacks. Then the other one. All right.
Yeah, I know when jetpacks came out, everyone couldn't believe it. It was such like jetpacks could never happen. Everyone thought jetpacks could never happen. Yeah. And then they came out and it was like, oh my gosh, they're real.
I just think everyone should have one.
I like that. So, I mean,
I got a burning question.
Oh, yeah. Eric's in the background here. Yeah, please.
Some guys, random voice in the background asking questions. Jeff, so like you guys, ever since the 90s, I mean, the first documentary I saw on UFO was UFOs Are Real. And my father and I always would contemplate the possibility of it, and we'd see these patterns, and it was always about the evidence and just those one key witnesses and stuff that would show it. And now it's like we can put a green checkbox on, like, okay, this has happened now, where there's been official sources, as you say. I find it interesting, and I'm curious what your opinion is on this, is we know that with social hierarchy, with governance, that in military, that there's always been a tendency amongst human beings to want to control the narrative on things.
Yeah.
And power always seeks to be relevant, okay? You need context for government and stuff like that. And sometimes the idea of a threat is something that gets people to then feel a codependent or a need for that protection, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Now we have, President Trump has come out this, past year and announced Space Force. Mm-hmm. We have now this leak, or not even a leak, and just a blatant announcement from the Pentagon.
Uh-huh.
Do you see any correlation between those two things? And do you think there is this idea of moving forward into the Star Trek aspect of things, where this old story of human where that there would be a motive to control the agenda, much like Dr. Greer illustrated and unacknowledged that Wernher von Braun announced on his deathbed?
Yeah. So when it comes to Space Force, let's just specifically talk about that. That is 100% nonsense. Nonsense. Okay, let me explain. We already have Naval Space Command. There's already Air Force Space Command. I won't get into all the things that I've heard. There's not enough time about Naval Space Command and their technological capabilities in the outer atmosphere. But Space Force was a political gesture to seem cool. It's a complete reinvention of something that already existed much better and much more efficiently. It's a complete monumental waste of resources and time to create a window dressing of silliness. It's like, we've got a post office. I'm gonna build another thing over here called the Office of Post, and they're also gonna deliver mail. But check this out: totally different people, and the letters will be red, not blue. So that's just a window dressing.
Yeah.
But I understand, Eric, what you're saying. Like, is that the beginning of a hopeful gesture? No, I wouldn't say that is. But these types of little announcements, hopefully will get us in the right direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I was curious more about the idea of wanting to control narrative, even if it's not Space Force per se, but like this shadowy aspect of the behind the scenes, black budget, corporate style secret military. Are they developing a secret space program, or are they ahead of this?
They are. Look, when I say these things, like, I've known this for a long time. People in the audience that are watching this are going to go, "What?" But I laugh when you say, "Are they developing a secret Space Force?" Yeah, that's been around for decades, literally decades. There's already a secret Space Force under the Navy.
I've just noticed in the UFO community, there's kind of two camps. You kind of land on like the Stars Academy and the idea of like threat and national threat. Could this be a threat? The big question: are the aliens a threat? You hear this word threat.
Yeah.
And then there's like Dr. Greer's like peace, love, and happiness, and maybe there's some truth landed down the middle. It's just kind of interesting.
I love that. So let's be realistic, you guys. Do we know every single type of alien creature that's out there? Even if you believe what I just said, and there's dozens of species that have already been identified through the Disclosure Project and branches of that?
Yep.
No, we don't. Is there for sure some type of an alien species or entity that doesn't have our best interest at heart? And to us, to them, we're just ants? whereas we don't think of ants as anything we need to worry about. For sure, probably. But does that mean that we are under current imminent threat by an alien life form of some kind that means us harm? No. For sure, they're probably out there. It may not even be malevolent. It may just be they're indifferent to caring about us. But if we were actually under an imminent threat,
yeah,
do you think we would even be here right now? I mean,
no, exactly.
Do you think we have the technology to fend it off?
Yeah.
No. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I might have gotten sidetracked.
No. These are the advanced questions.
Do you guys mind if I ask a question here? Because you said a couple of things that are interesting. And
Yeah.
you said something about the year of upside down.
Yeah.
This year's been nuttier than a bag of squirrel turds.
Yes, sir. Yep.
We got the murder hornets. We got the COVID-19.
I wish you could see his shirt, by the way, you guys, because he literally has a squirrel on his shirt.
Well, that's Bucky's truck stop in Texas. So, but anyways,
A beaver, sorry.
Yeah. So you say that the year of upside down, and they're trickling this stuff out, and all of this craziness that's going up, and everyone's like, oh, President Trump's causing all the problems, the Democrats are causing all the problems.
Sure.
Could it be that there's going to be some type of a release of information that would disrupt, like you said, if we get the free energy, the coal or the petroleum and coal and all that stuff goes right out the window. That's a multi-trillion, gazillion-dollar industry that would absolutely cripple the entire world economy if we were to take that out. Do you think that there are factions or entities or whatever it might be, people that are in control that have access to that technology, that are making the little bit pill, that, like you said, that are keeping that, and maybe because of all this stuff that's going on, there's been a threat that information could be getting out? It would completely disrupt the life as we know it as Homo sapiens on the planet Earth.
Yeah, are you saying, do I think that there's people that have control of that information and can or can't release it? Is that what your question is?
Well, yeah, or there's a threat that it's going to be released, and all of this confusion and chaos that's going on for 2020 is a distraction to keep our mind from paying attention to what could be put out. I'm just curious. I mean, it's something to think about.
I mean, I guess anything's possible, but this information has been kept beautifully hidden.
I heard it costs more to have the
time.
information secret. It costs them more money to keep it secret than. But sorry, continue. Sorry.
No. Let's just go out on a limb and be crazy. If
I think we've proven nothing in this episode of this podcast. We are so effing far on a limb that we are. Yeah.
Well, like I said, listen. I'm almost 50 years old. I don't know how old you are. But
76.
76.
No,
well, you're doing well. You got the alien power.
Not bad.
But here's the deal. We've never seen a year like this in my entire life. So there's got to be something. It can't be a coincidence. You turn on the news and you walk down the street. You turn on the news and you see all this stuff like you think that the world was burning, and we walk down the street like we're perfectly normal. And
it's an interesting thought, and I had never thought of it that way. You're basically taking it from the other way around. You're saying, are some of the events that have happened or been nudged into happening that make this year so bizarre engineered a little bit as a distraction to start to release this?
Correct.
I'm just gut feeling. I'm skeptical of that.
Sure.
And why? I don't know. I just am. I can't give you all the reasons why. So your theory might be valid, but I'm also arguing that this is nice. This is cool to see. It's hopeful. But it's just a tiny little nugget. I don't know that they would have to go through all that other effort to release something like this, because you'll notice that there was a collective yawn when this happened.
Yeah.
So
I mean that's also some of the confusion as why now. It's like murder hornets, now this.
Yeah.
So I mean like what's next? I mean
what is next?
Is there going to be a crack in the earth and the underworld's coming up? I don't know.
Yeah.
So
what have you heard?
Yeah, you're the filmmaker, man. I bet you want him to edit some footage.
Interesting thought.
No, but listen, if you need any help in any of these projects, you know who to call.
You need a new fence, man? Here's a number.
A new gate, yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. So wrapping this up. Yeah. So I really just wanted to do this because of this. I mean, I would not have done this podcast prior to this because. People say, yeah, Jordan, UFOs are military. They're unidentified flying objects that probably are just military. But finally, when this happens, people are starting to wake up more. I just want to bring more awareness, like you said, and to go in that Star Trek world, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just end on a more confusing note, because I'm sure you want to end on confusion. You're not wrong. I mean, they're not wrong. So because we've had decades and decades of access to this technology, we do have craft that appear to defy all physics. If you saw the maneuvers, you would say no human pilot could be in there, and that's wrong. And a lot of it is us. But the common standard military doesn't recognize it as anything we have. Meanwhile, dun, 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 the other divisions have it. So not all of this is of a extraterrestrial nature. Some of it is our stuff, and we can talk some other time about how you're able to do those maneuvers without dying.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
But there is a way.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right, guys. So don't forget. Oh yeah, this is the camera. Cool. All right, guys. So honestly, this has been my very first official legit podcast, and thank you so much for coming today.
Man. Yeah.
Guys, in the comment section below, Jeff will be able to read any of your questions or concerns. Probably get a lot of concerns, man.
Angry.
But first things first, if you're just now hearing any information about like this red pill stuff, watch Unacknowledged like he was recommending. Type in the Disclosure Project and just watch the interviews of the high government officials. Type in 2001 Dr. Greer. It was 2001 Dr. Greer.
Disclosure Project.
Disclosure Project.
Yeah.
And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more stuff like this. I love this stuff because, I don't know, I'm just like, I'm in the mode of what's possible. I'm in the what's possible mode these days. I mean, so, I mean, I could ramble on forever, but thank you so much, man.
Of course,
It's been
Love
awesome.
Thanks, Jordan.
Cool. Later, guys.